Thank you so much for joining us. We now have with us Megha, who heads all things growth at Meesho, a brand that needs no introduction. Meesho has been a category creator, right? Like nobody even thought about this category 4 or 5 years back, right? And more importantly, it fills me with immense pride when I see multiple startups in YC cohort claiming to be Meesho for X, right? So it's a verb more than anything, right? So thank you so much, Megha, for joining us. And to get right to it, now that we are here at Hash Growth, why don't we start by talking about that very keyword growth, right? So it is a very commonly used term. It has various meanings and interpretations. So in your opinion, for a consumer brand, what really defines growth?
Sure. First of all, it's absolutely great to be here in person. Thank you so much for having me over. And thank you all for actually sacrificing your lunchtime to hear me out. So thank you. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. I'll also leave my coordinates, which Vangi, so you know how to get me. Coming to growth. For me, growth is understanding your user end to end, ensuring that all the problem statements that they're facing is solved, removing all the friction points, and essentially ensuring that your business, your platform, your product, whichever way you want to define it, is continuously growing. That's really what it is. Very broadly, the way I see growth, it's got 6 parts of the puzzle. It starts with awareness. Are people aware about your brand? Do they know who you are? If they are installing your app, using your product, coming to your website, do they know what should they be expecting from you? So the value proposition is extremely clear in their mind when they are clicking the ad or coming to you, right? So that is awareness. Second is acquisition, which is actually making them come to your website or install your app, etc. Right? So things like performance marketing, referral, content, SEO, etc. starts falling into that bucket. Third is activation. It is basically a core action that you want your user to do. So for something like a Meesho, which is an e-commerce app, we want them to place the order. Now this is a very tricky problem because when the person is coming on the app or the website, they have a lot of anxiety. They're continuously thinking, is this place for me or not? Should I be here or not? Should I be investing my time, energy, money, everything here or not, right? So it is not just about helping them discover the right product at the right price point, but it's also about solving for trust, comprehension, familiarity. So it becomes like a very interesting problem to solve for. The fourth is what I call as the habit formation, which is basically to say, the way we define is now they've done the first order. Can you get them to a point where thinking about your product is like a second nature? Quantitatively, the way we think about it is like an OXY sort of a point in Meesho's case, which is placing X orders in Y time. What that means is if the person crosses that journey, then their app retention or web retention or the product retention is very high. Right? In Meesho's case, it's to the tune of 70-80%. That's what we get to, yes, after the habit formation. But the point, and qualitatively, if you think about it, it is the point at which you remove all the cognitive load, all the questions in their mind, right? It's become a second nature to think about that product. Now I don't have to think. I go into the mall, I go in anywhere, I know that this is the product I want. I'm coming to, whenever I think about shopping, Meesho is coming to mind, right? That's what is habit formation. Fifth is engagement. Now retention is solved. I'm coming to your app every single month. Can I deepen the engagement with you? Engagement is frequency, is the depth. Retention is width. Both Shivangi and Megha came on the app, but you came 10 times, I came 1 time. So you're obviously more valuable to the company, right? You're obviously more engaged. So how do I do that? How do I keep deepening the engagement? Is very important. Last is, even after doing all of this, there will be some people that you will end up losing. Correct. So how do you ensure that you're not letting those people churn? And if that churn is happening, you are still bringing them back, which is resurrection. So these are the 6 parts which together form growth. Awareness, acquisition, activation, habit, engagement, resurrection. A very long answer to your short question.
beautifully structured, I would say. But if you were to put that in perspective of measurable growth metrics that you track on a daily basis, that will help a ton put things in perspective for the audience.
Makes sense. So, all these 6 things I spoke about have their own measures that we look at. Overall, they are an input to growth overall. So for me, the metrics that I track at a growth overall would be transacting users every month, which is important for like an e-commerce player. Ultimately, it is about how many people are doing the core action that you want them to do in your product, app, website, whatever it is. The second metric that is very important for me is LTV by cost, which is to say every cohort that I'm acquiring, what is the kind of value they are generating? Because it's not just about blitz scaling, it's about fit scaling, that you have a sustainable growth. That's very important. So these are the top line metrics, but this is a very high level picture. Let's break it down into the metrics that the 6 puzzles I spoke about. So awareness, the way you measure is your mind metrics, which is font, tone, imagery. What are you relating this product with? Acquisition and activation both put together, how many people got activated? Means how many people did the core action that you wanted to do. So for example, like a content company, how many people saw X videos that they want them to watch, or comments, I don't know what they look at, but something like that. Habit formation, as I said, it's OXY. How many people who all got activated, let's say 100 people got activated, how many actually reached to this habit formation point? Simple percentage of people. Engagement, tau by mouth, frequency. It could be, for some people, it could be time spent on the app. Different metrics defined depending on what business you are in. Redirection, it's a churn. What people are churning out. Churn percentage, how can you reduce that? Those would be some of the metrics.
So let's actually take Meesho context itself, right? And you talked about blitz scaling to fit scaling, right? So, and you have seen that blitz scaling. So what really helped you navigate through that blitz scaling phase, deal with that massive scale and reach the fit scale that you're talking about?
Can I say luck?
It can't be all luck.
Okay, jokes apart, I think growth in general is a lot of discipline. I think it's true for most things in life, discipline, but I feel that growth specifically is built on, in my mind, 4 levers or 4 pillars, 4 inputs. And if those are done well, I feel the probability of success is much higher. Now, what are these pillars? The first is organization structure. It sounds boring, but it's true. The biggest problem I see is when branding, marketing, product, tech are seen in silos. Growth is holistic, has to be end to end. These all 6 things I spoke about is one thing contributing to growth. So you have to ensure your org structure is supportive of that. All of these representations are there under one bucket or one umbrella. That's number 1. Second, user obsession. Again, it is something of an abuse term. We all keep saying that we have to be user obsessed. But I want to call out a difference in how you become user obsessed. I see a lot of times as companies start growing a lot, this user research is delegated to the most junior most person. You do the calling, I won't. Or given to agencies. It's great, nothing wrong with it. Or we just run surveys. So we sit in our room, create a very logical survey and just roll it out. Or else we have already a problem statement in mind, a very crisp problem statement. We need more details and that's when we do calling. Yeah. Those are some of the things I see. Nothing wrong with any of these. These things are very important still. But the problem is in all of these things, biases start coming in. You've already made up your mind in a few things. So you are actually not discovering new problems of the user, not in the truest way. The way I feel should be done, and this is something that I've almost hammered in my team, is everyone, starting from the founder to BA, needs to do user calling themselves every week, if not every week, once in 2 weeks, and do a debriefing. Which is to say, you get in a group of 4 to 5 with a broad problem statement. Let's say we pick up that awareness is something that we want to solve for. You pick up that broad problem statement and understand what are the problems that people are actually struggling with. Get into a room and do debrief. What all did you hear? very clear trends will start emerging out. Trends in terms of there are things that you were already aware of, are already working on it. Some things that you were not aware of, heard for the first time, take it up as a problem statement, double click and see if those are still worth solving or not, because you would still hear edge cases. So it's not necessary that you start solving everything. But that's what the difference is. I'd like to give an example. I know we are running short on time. But Meesho started investing in something called as influencer marketing almost 2.5 years back. We were probably the first players, among the first players who went so big on influencer marketing. Our scale still is 6x of any other e-com player there, the kind of views we generate. I would love to say I'm a visionary, but no. The point is, it all came from users. When we were speaking to our users, new users, and trying to understand where did they discover us from, what is it that was the hook for them? Why did they stay here? One of these insights started coming out that, I saw an influencer wearing something. I saw an ad of yours carrying the same product. I clicked.
Yeah.
So we realized that why can't we test it out? We tested it out, and by the way, that attribution was terrible. Because we had a link, people had to press it and come. The data actually did not support that we should go big on influencer marketing at all. But when we spoke to users, and we did a qualitative attribution, and we do it weekly by the way, to reduce the noise, we realized that it was 10x of what quantitative attribution was saying. And we doubled down on it, and rest is history. It became a huge channel of acquisition. It channelized intent beautifully, because at that time Meesho was largely a fashion sort of a category focus, right? 2.5 years back now, things have obviously evolved, but it proved to be an amazing channel for us. Similarly, in the activation, we wanted to reduce cost of trial, so we introduced a first order discount. And we realized that people were still not aware, despite all the banners, everything. So we realized that people are kind of blind to all of these banners, advertising. We just slashed the price on the product, on the catalog card itself. It gave us like 20% jump in activation. Highest ROE ever. Like it was a one sprint effort and we got 20%. My point is just speaking to the user made us understand so many potent things. And obviously solution is something we will have to figure out, but that's what it was. The third is how you look at your retention. I think that is extremely important. Because when you're scaling really fast, a lot of low intent users start to come in. When a lot of low intent users are coming in, obviously your retention will start suffering. It's very difficult to retain them. And if you keep scaling, at that time you get leaky bucket. And that's the biggest problem that most people suffer with. And therefore retention, the way you look at it is, actually if you take a step back and think about retention, it's a blended number. It's a blend of a lot of cohorts. There's a core cohort which has a huge PMF, a very strong PMF, and therefore has a very strong retention. And there are a lot of adjacent cohorts that are coming in. And there are certain friction points that we haven't been able to figure out, and because of which they haven't been able to become that core cohort for you. How do you solve for that? And once you do, feed that in back top of the funnel. For example, Meesho started getting in a lot of new to e-commerce. They had never transacted on e-commerce ever. Obviously, it was much harder for them. So we first solve their problem and then feed it back top of the funnel. And then you just see a very, very strong growth. So that's the third thing. Fourth, there are no silver bullets in growth. What you need is a very good framework of how you spend your bandwidth in 10x levers, in a lot of experimental levers, and some deterministic hygiene sort of levers. And every time, whatever frequency is right for your business stage, you evaluate if that time spent is right or not. That feedback loop is very critical. So those would be some of the things that we did which really helped us.
And I mean, very interesting insights, right, Megha, which also makes me a bit curious, right? Like when you are at the scale at which you are, right? You are not just dealing with India, you're dealing with many Indias within India, right? And Meesho, for one, is an app that was always building for Bharat from day one. And that is why there is no surprise that, more than 70% of your users come from tier 3 towns, more than any other cities, right? So I'm sure, a lot of people here are dealing with similar problems. They want to know what does it really take to build for Bharat?
Sure, I think it comes down to, again, being obsessed with your user. I'm probably going to sound like a broken record very soon, but that's what it is. See, ultimately, it's all about the product. If the product is resonating with whoever you're building for, you're home. The second biggest thing is you have to communicate so that they understand this product is for you in a very, very simplified way. And that's what Meesho really did. Our product, if you look at it, India, 85% of India consumes unorganized, unbranded, long fat tail of retail.
Yeah.
Everybody focused on getting that 15% online.
Yeah.
Meesho focused on getting that 85% online, which had very different problems because these were MSMEs. These were not large branded companies which already knew what to do. MSMEs had huge set of problems, very, very different. And that's what we've been unlocking. Similarly, e-commerce made this popular of 3-day delivery, 4-day delivery. There's a cost associated to it. This TG would wait for 5-6 days, but would rather take that 10 rupees, 15 rupees off from the product price. So this TG wanted a different assortment, wanted a price point which was lower. And that's exactly what Meesho worked on. So this scheme is a clear insight, by the way. We increased supplier commissions some 3 years back, and then we realized that, okay, this is not really working out. Went back to the users, understood what was important for them, and since then it has been structured initiatives that we've done, one after the other. Very big initiatives, some industry-defining initiatives, like we went to 0% commission for suppliers. No one in India had ever thought about it ever. We did those because our user wanted it. Our user wanted that price point. It was simple. And then when it comes to communications, you talk to them in the language they understand. You talk to them in stories they relate to. You use spaces which they relate to. It's all about them resonating with them. So that's what, yes, correct. Vernacular is what we meant. Very heavy usage of vernacular. We use very local, regional influences and not so much national influences. So that really has been our strategy.
So, keeping that in mind, right, like there are a lot of growth people in the room today, and this is a more popular struggle for them. I mean, a lot of this is great, but how do you manage budgets versus spends, right? And how do you specifically decide where to allocate more money, branding or performance marketing, right? So, what is the Meesho mantra there?
I think this is one of my favorite questions because I have personally struggled a lot with this. And I think over the course of 3 years, I have kind of created some frameworks, but yeah, I think the journey is still on. So I think the way I think about this is both of them serve very, very different purpose, and that's very important to understand. Brand marketing is an investment. It's an investment in future. It's a long-term strategy. Performance marketing is here and now. It's like a sniper. It converts whoever is your market. Example, your TAM is, let's say, 10 people. And let's say 3 people are already primed for your product. They are, for example, in Meesho's case, they are already e-commerce users maybe, or they want to buy, etc. Now, when you do branding, it will talk to all 10. Performance will only speak to those 3 people and will keep talking to those 3 people. So what happens when you've converted those 3 people? Your CAC goes higher. Right?
Maybe by cost goes low.
It drops. And therefore, investing in branding is very important because what it does is that if your TAM is 10 and it's continuously speaking to all of them, it moves the market. So from 3, it makes 5 people, to 7, to 8, to 9, to 10, right? That's how your CAC doesn't go up. So it's very important to balance it out. And how do you balance or how do you think how much to give really depends on how mature your category is, in what stage your own product is. For example, if a category is very mature and you are just a new other entrant, something like Meesho, the category was very, very developed. E-commerce had been invested for a very long time. So our first job was to convert a few people who were already e-com users, and therefore we went perf heavy. But very soon we started exhausting that user base, and we knew that our user is actually the tier 2 plus, which no one had ever invested in. So we had to get in branding. So slowly and gradually, from almost like a 90% in perf and 10 in branding, it started becoming reverse, slowly and gradually. So that's how I will say it. I don't want to go too deep because I'm very cognizant of time. But if anyone wants to know more, please hit me on Twitter or LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, to summarize, I think initially focus more on performance marketing and then focus, the long-term goal should be branding because the tier 2, tier 3 relates more with that, right? So in the interest of time, I'll just take a moment to admit that it's a delight for me to be hosting one of the women CXO leaders out there, and not just for me, as much as it's inspirational for me, I'm sure it is for many women out there in the audience. If there is anything that you would like to, that one piece of advice you'd like to resonate for those budding women professionals, all ears, and we'll wrap it up with that.
Sure. So I actually don't give different advice. I give same advice to both men and women. The only advice I give is to be fearless, to be ambitious, to go big, to think big, and just chase your dreams.
Spot on, right? Like who is ever is the ladder otherwise, right? So thank you so much. You have been a lovely speaker, Megha. Some hard-hitting facts like go fearless women out there versus, other insights she gave for growth and product people out there. So thank you so much for sparing this time. I appreciate you doing this for us. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.